The views, opinions, and information expressed during Youth Services podcast series are solely those of individuals involved. Any recommendations or advice during the podcast is general in nature and does not replace the need to seek professional advice. If you are in need of urgent assistance, please call 000 or the Kids Helpline on 1800 55 1800. Hello and welcome to our final episode of KC Youth Services podcast for the year. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Taryn.
And we are your hosts. Today we are joined by the lovely Kiah Mills, who is the KC Aboriginal Gathering Place Programs and Partnerships Officer. Welcome, Kiah.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. And we are also joined by the wonderful Elly Whiting, who was the former KC Youth Services podcast host and is now a youth worker at the Dandenong and District Aboriginal Co-op. Awesome to have you back, Elly.
Thank you for having me. It feels weird to sit on the other side.
Okay, so before we begin, I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners, KC's Aboriginal communities and their rich culture, and pay respect to their elders, past, present and future. We acknowledge Aboriginal people as Australia's first peoples and as the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we work and live. I would also like to invite everyone to listen to this podcast. We provide an inclusive space for all of our young people in the community.
Thank you, Taylor. So we might get started, and as always, we like to start with a bit of a fun question. So the question that we have for you today is, what mythical creature would you want to exist and why?
Wait, do I get to be the mythical creature or can we just have them in the world?
We can just have them in the world?
I think I would love to have mermaids.
Mermaids?
Yeah, I'm a little bit obsessed with the ocean. So I think having mermaids, it would be really cool to kind of find out what actually happens in the big blue. And they'd be obviously to be able to help us. I'm going to get a little bit deep now, but they'll be able to help us with like climate change and cleaning up the ocean and things like that, which would be really cool.
Deep, pun intended. I love that though. They'll be like ocean advocates, which will be awesome. I know that you'd be part of that committee.
I'd be the mermaid.
What about you, Kiah? What mythical creature would you want to exist and why?
Okay, not to copy. I have my script written. So I would choose a mermaid as well. I know that I just feel like to be able to like live on like both worlds, like land and sea. And I don't know, they just have like so much like freedom and then like just like the different perspectives of things. I don't know, it would just be really interesting to me. So if I could be a mermaid, that would be ideal. But if they could just exist, I'm okay with that.
I was just going to say,
I was going to say that's our next job role.
Yeah. And I love all the movies and shows that they have based on mermaids and things. So really awesome. What about you, Taylor? What mythical creature would you want to exist and why?
So sorry about before, my dog Scooby decided he wanted to be part of the podcast and he was barking just now, but he's done now. He's back in his bed. You know what's so funny is I was going to say mermaids as well. I have it written down in front of me and everything. So the reason that I would like mermaids to be in existence is I feel like there's so much that we don't know about the ocean, and there's so much that hasn't been explored in the ocean, and I would just love to have that conversation and just find out more about this whole mystical environment that is such a mystery to us.
I love that. So we've got like a bit of a common consensus on mermaids. Well, mine would be unicorns, because like, can you imagine unicorns delivering your Uber Eats? Like they'd miss all the traffic. There would be no delays. Yeah, mine probably isn't as well thought out as your guys, but yeah, unicorns all the way.
So in that
you could ride them too.
Yeah.
Yes. So do you think that unicorns can like teleport, or what is their forms of transportation? Do they run? Do they
fly, don't they? Because they have like wings so they could fly above traffic.
Oh, you're thinking of a Pegasus.
Oh, yeah, that.
Yes.
I didn't know that. Okay.
There is a difference. There you go.
Yeah, you learn something new every day. Thanks, Taylor.
Taryn's going to Google what Pegasus is.
Love that.
Thanks, everyone, for your answers. They were fantastic. I love that so many of us had something in common with what mythical creature we'd like. So our first, I guess, serious question is, please tell us about your role and what led you to where you are now. And I'll ask Kiah first.
All right, here we go. So in my current role with the City of KC, I'm in the Aboriginal Engagement Unit. So my responsibilities are to facilitate programs for our community, such as a Koori homework group, which helps engage youth in their education. We also have our Koori School Holiday program, which caters to youth aged between 10 and 25 years. So this program is run across 2 weeks every school holidays to provide activities such as like ice skating or going to the snow, going to Gumbaya World, and so much more activities. And then for the elders in our community, we have programs such as our gardening group, which is kind of just a social club for our elders to get together and they help maintain the garden around the centre. And then we also have our Yarn and Arts, which again is kind of like a social group for the elders and they just perform art activities. So I'm really passionate about my role and I'm so happy I was given this opportunity to be a part of the team that I'm in. And kind of around what led me here is something I think about often. So I always knew that I wanted to work in community. I just wasn't sure how to do that and in what way I wanted to help the Indigenous community. So I began my work in the community services sector as a receptionist and I was in that role for about 3 years. So although I was still helping community in that role, I knew I wasn't living up to my full potential and knew that I had more to offer and give to my community. So I also had a very challenging upbringing and I wanted to see that as a positive and use that to my advantage to push myself and use those advantages to best help the youth who might be going through similar things now that they're at that teenage age and just help them become the best versions of themselves. So while I was at my last job, I saw my current role that I'm in now being advertised and I pondered on if I should apply for it for days on ends. And then I thought to myself, why am I hesitating about this? This is kind of the opportunity I've been waiting for so long. So I just went for it and I pushed that fear of change aside and just pretty much went for it. So if I stopped doubting myself, like I could have applied myself a bit more, but in the end it got me in kind of like my dream role and I absolutely love what I'm doing here and I hope that that can inspire others to do the same.
That's amazing. And you know, I think we can all relate to being a bit fearful of just going for what we want and ignoring all of our fears. And I think it's amazing that you did that. I can definitely relate to that, just wanting to help and work with the community, but not knowing what you want to do exactly. So, yeah, I think it's amazing that you just went for it and you've ended up in something that is so incredible. That's amazing.
Definitely.
And it can be so hard to find those challenges as well. Like in school, they're telling you, what do you want to be when you grow up? But like you're still a kid and it's so hard. So me, I'm now 23 and I'm kind of only just figuring it out. So there's so much pressure on that. And like it is something that really does just take a lot of time.
Absolutely. It's something that in high school we have to just decide and figure out who we are then and there and just, yeah, you just sort of have to make the leap and figure out who you are along the way, and eventually you'll end up in something that is absolutely perfect for you, but it's about making that first step, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yes. So Elly, please tell us about your role and what led you to where you are now.
I guess with my role, obviously, as everyone's probably heard my voice in the previous podcast, I do come from KC Youth Services, and I think I was there for about 3 years, and I can definitely resonate with how Kiah was saying it does take time to find what you want to do. I'm a little bit older and I'm still finding my place, but being a youth worker and having that opportunity to kind of be that safe space for young people and providing the support that they may not necessarily have in their home environment, or whether it be school environment or anything like that, just that consistency for them as well. So I transitioned over to the Dandenong and District Aboriginals Co-op about 6 weeks ago, and my passion kind of started when I made a connection with actually the Aboriginal gathering place who Kiah works for, and just meeting the young people in community. Literally, they're so full of life, and it just makes you really feel like you have a purpose to be able to help them. Not help them because they have community and they have that, but being involved with them really makes me feel like whole. And I know that sounds a little bit silly, but yeah, just being able to have the opportunity to work with the young people. I haven't done a whole lot as of yet, just because I have been in lockdown and the restrictions and things like that haven't allowed me to meet a lot of the young people face to face. But even just kind of catching up with them online, and hopefully soon running programs with them, and yeah, just focusing on their well-being and things like that. So my role is the female youth worker. However, I do work with both males and females, but we're eventually going to start doing some girls-only programs, inclusive to all programs as well. And I will be working alongside Kiah at the gathering place with some of the things that she does there as well. So still finding my feet, but yeah, just being that support person for the young people. And
yeah, it sounds like you were really inspired by Aboriginal culture and you felt that connection and you were keen to get involved, and that's really inspiring in itself. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, and I think you're not taught a lot about the history and things like that in school. So I didn't obviously learn much about the Australian culture until maybe a couple of years ago. So yeah, it really opens your eyes, and in my opinion, I just want to be able to kind of make it all inclusive and making sure that everybody has equal opportunity.
Nice.
So I was just going to say it's so admirable, and like both of your answers, it's just, inspiring, as Taylor was saying, because you're both allowing your passions and, your lived experience to drive you to be like champions in that area and leaders in the community, which is really exciting. And I can't wait to see what comes of both of you stepping into these roles and in the physical space as well. So really exciting stuff, and love both your hearts towards community. So awesome work. The next question I have here is, what sort of identified challenges are Aboriginal youth facing today, and what is the way forward? So what needs to happen to make change? And Kiah, I might aim this question at you.
So COVID has been really challenging on everyone, especially our Indigenous youth. So they've become really distant in their education, their personal well-being, and seeing the potential that they have within themselves. So I think a lot of our youth who are disadvantaged see themselves as damaged or a lost cause, which is really challenging for me as a worker to see. And they have so much to offer, but it can be hard for them to see this within their own self. So I see that as kind of one of the biggest challenges at the moment, is that they're not seeing their self-worth. Like, we've been locked down because of COVID for like so long, but like it's not only locked us down as a society, but it's locked us down into our feelings. And like, given all our like past generational trauma, like confronting those feelings isn't really something that our community does really well. And it still to this day is something that we don't do very well. So I feel like a lot of their feelings have been suppressed, or like they're neglecting their self-care. So that's definitely one of the things. And that's not just across Aboriginal youth, it is other youth. But obviously, because I work with the Aboriginal youth, it's just so hard to see them go through those things. So I think one of the best things we can do is advocate for our youth and like guide them in the ways, like we might think that they might better themselves or challenge their thinkings. Like maybe they have one way of doing things, but it might not be the best way. So we'll be like, oh, like, you're trying this way, how about you try this way? And just kind of challenge their thinkings and get them kind of like changing their way of doing things, because our youth are pretty much our leaders of tomorrow. So we can't expect them to be the leaders of tomorrow if we're keeping them down. So we kind of have to just be the biggest advocates for them so that they like feel inspired and that their voices are heard, so that they can kind of grow up to be our next leaders.
I love that. Yeah. And you are so right in saying that, you know, youth are our tomorrow, they are our future. So it's really sad to see what the lockdown and the pandemic has done, like, mentally as well. And with all the trauma, you know, resurfacing and things like that, it's so awesome that you can identify that and then put in place strategies and give them tools and things to empower them to know that there are resources out there and there are different ways of looking at it and different ways of perceiving things. So really awesome work, and really excited to see, what the future holds for Aboriginal young people, because having you all as leaders, like, they've got a lot of support behind them. So, awesome work to all of you guys.
Yeah, I second that. You guys are doing absolutely fabulous work, and it's just incredible. I've really liked what you said about challenging people's thinking, so that because people do tend to have especially in times like this, have a tendency to sort of go down this rabbit hole and think that everything's against them. So just challenging that thought process is, it involves a lot of strength, having to tell people, you know what, let's think a different way and let's focus on our strengths to overcome these barriers. So you guys are doing absolutely amazing work, like I was saying. I understand that you both started your role during lockdown. So I was wondering what that was like, and if you did manage to work with young people during that time, how did you develop that rapport with young people, or even continue relationships with existing clients if you did have them?
So as I mentioned earlier, 6 weeks ago, I started in lockdown, so we were in the thick of it. And it is really challenging starting a new role when you can't meet face to face. And I'm sure whoever's met me knows that I love to chat and I love to be social. And I like to build rapport with people face to face. Like, I'll chat to you on the phone all the time, or we'll have meetings and stuff, but there is literally nothing like that human connection and trying to build that relationship. And I know how important it is for me in this role now as a non-Indigenous worker, it is to build those relationships in order to build that trust. So I'll admit it is super challenging, as I mentioned, but it's so great that we have technology. So being able, just emailing out, reaching out to people, having the opportunity to jump on some online programs that were going on just to let them know who I am. We also created an Instagram for the co-op as well, so hopefully trying to engage with the young people on there. But everyone has been really welcoming and so kind to me, which has been really helpful. But, just kind of reaching out and just sending those emails and letting them know who I am is what I have had to do, because unfortunately everyone was locked down. We couldn't go and meet these young people. But now that things are opening up, it is going to be a lot better. So we had a couple of online hangouts and things like that, which I've been really grateful for, but it isn't the same as going in person.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Elly. Really appreciate that. So how about you, Kiah? How did you find it?
So starting my role in lockdown was really challenging. I'm not going to lie about that. I found it really challenging to learn a new role, which was kind of like an in-person role. So like a lot of my role is based around programs. So delivering like our homework group, our gardening group, and as you obviously know, you can't do gardening online. So I kind of had to change my thinking, and I'm like, wow, like how am I going to change a lot of this stuff to an online space? So when I first started in my role, I think about 7 months ago now, we were out of lockdown. So I think I got about a month into my role, and then we'll straight into lockdown. So that was kind of like my first kind of look at what my role looked like in lockdown. So the first month I was like, awesome, this is easy breezy. Like I can get a hold of stuff. Like I was able to build those relationships in the community. But thankfully coming into this space, I already knew a lot of the youth, just being involved in the Indigenous community, and like a lot of people know my family. So even if they didn't know my face, they might have just known of me. So luckily that kind of made it a lot easier to build rapport. But yeah, as soon as we moved into that lockdown space, I really had to change my thinking, like how am I going to keep this rapport going with the elders? I would try and do things like an online bingo, or try and set them up with maybe like a Zoom call if they could figure out how to use Zoom. And then in a lot of the youth space, you had to kind of like do a lot of online content. So we started looking into like online cooking nights and online trivia, and pretty much like we've done so much stuff online, and we had to like kind of keep the youth on their toes, like what's coming next. So every week, like we would try and think of new activities just so that they're not doing the same thing every week. Because if they're doing trivia week in, week out, like you're not really going to get much engagement if they're doing the same thing. So me and the team put in so much effort trying to do all the background work and the planning, and we were actually really successful in our online space, which was incredible, because at the start we weren't really getting much engagement, but then we did like a lot of publicity through our Facebook page and like our comms and stuff like that, and we were getting a lot of momentum in that space. So, and then yeah, you get used to the online space, and now we're back out of lockdown again. So now I've got to kind of reverse all that and do a whole different, another way of thinking. And now I'm like, how am I going to do it in person again? Because I've been doing it online, and it's just a constant transition between lockdown and not lockdown. So you're just always on your toes and challenging your thinking every day.
You get a bit of whiplash, don't you?
Yeah.
It's back and forth, absolutely. But I'm glad that you were able to utilise the social media. I found that with our service it's done the same. It's a really useful tool, and everyone appreciates that online presence as well.
Definitely. And I think everyone's done such a good job that we're going to be experts at, being innovative and adaptive and resilient in these times, especially with service delivery. What other ways did the lockdown affect your service delivery?
So I've kind of touched on that way a little bit, moving from like the online space to the physical space. But just in terms of like the service delivery as well, I found it a lot harder to promote, because some people like might not have access to phones and computers and stuff like that. So how are you going to reach out to those people who don't have social media or like access to Zoom and stuff like that, which I found really challenging. So another thing we were doing is there'd be times where we'd have like a baking day, and like we'd make cookies or cupcakes and like stuff for community, and then we'd go to community and like deliver them these like cookies and stuff like that, just so that we were still able to keep contact with those people who might not have computers, or people who were kind of doing it tough and needed that contact. And it kind of became a regular thing, and people like knew that on this day someone's going to come around and just like say, hi, how are you? Like, even if it's just a 2-minute conversation, I feel like that's better than nothing at all. So yeah,
that's
I feel
lovely.
like so that's something that's kind of been one of my favorite things during lockdown, is just really challenging our ways of thinking about how can you cater to everyone who might not have like the everyday things that we kind of take for granted.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that is definitely an identified barrier that presents itself, like when we are having to move to the online space and have all this virtual content, that like there are communities out there that don't have the ways and means to be able to access that. So that's just fantastic that you were able to, and what better way to bring people together than food? Am I right? Like.
So our next question was, anything in the works for the future or for next year?
Yes, and I can't wait. My co-worker Nathan and I are working on trying to get some of our programs up and running again. So before I started, I believe that there was a morning program where he'd pick up young people, take them to the courts, play some basketball, and then go back to the gathering place, have breakfast, and then he would drop them off at school. I'm not too sure who he worked with, so I apologise to whoever was helping him, but he's super passionate about it. So I'm really, really excited to start that program because I'm quite into fitness and wellbeing as well. So that'll be a really cool way to kind of get the young people involved. So we're trying to get that up and going, and I know he's very excited also. There's a week called the Massive Murray Paddle, which usually runs in November, but I believe it will be going up in February. So I believe we take some young people up with some youth justice workers and just kind of build that positive relationship with each other for a week long paddling across the Murray River. I'm still yet to learn a little bit more about it, so I'm not the expert, but that sounds really, really fun as well. Other than that, just, getting back to normal stuff. I believe that we're going to start a girls-only program, just trying to build that rapport, build some confidence with girls, get that engagement back in. Yeah, just all the fun stuff that I'm really, really excited to come up with. And there's a couple of events as well in the making. But, wait and see.
Amazing. So is the best way to sort of get involved with these programs to check out your social media pages or
Yep. Yeah, okay. So we've just started the Instagram page, so I'm going to pop up some things that are happening in the future on there, but we also have a Facebook page which is just the co-op's name, so Dandenong District Aborigines Co-op on Facebook, where most things are posted on there. However, we're going to try and engage with more young people on Instagram because apparently Facebook's for old people. So I've been told.
So we'll make sure we put all of the details for these awesome experiences in the description for this podcast for sure.
So are there any exciting things happening over the holidays?
So over the school holidays at the Gathering Place, I facilitate our Corey School Holiday Program, which is open to Indigenous youth aged between 10 and 25. So this is a really exciting time for me. I'm still in the planning phases, but this is going to be kind of our first one out of lockdown. So I'm trying my best to make it as big and grand as I can, but still trying to keep in mind all the limitations that we might have in terms of the repercussions of COVID and what that looks like. But our last school holiday program was online, so I'm so excited to have it back in person. So on each activity we have up to 45 youth, so they're really engaging days, it's all hands on deck, and it's just full on. And then throughout the holidays, we still have our programs our gardening group and yarn and arts that run through the Gathering Place. So you've got all your youth stuff, your elder stuff, and I think we have a few events that are still in the planning phases that will also be happening throughout the school holidays. So it's when it gets holidays time, it's crazy in community. Our Gathering Place is going to be packed and swarmed with people just excited to get out of lockdown. So we're still in the planning phases of a lot of things, but there is so much exciting stuff to come.
Sounds super exciting. It sounds like it's going to be jam-packed full of fun. So we'll be sure to pop the Aboriginal Gathering Place link below as well so that people can keep their eyes peeled.
Sure. What a wonderful contrast to being stuck at home, hey? So we have as our final question, our positive story question. So could you please tell us about a time where you worked with a young person and it made you smile? And this could be from any role.
So I'll jump in. So mine isn't a professional story, it's more a personal story, just because I haven't really had much experience in a case management role or a direct role where I'm working with youth. Mm-hmm. So this experience happened before COVID. So in my last job, there was a sibling group that had been removed from their parents and they were about to go into the foster care system. And once that happens, they're just going to get lost in the system. So my sisters and I were thinking of how can we stop this from happening? So from there, me and my two sisters took in these 3 kids, and we had them in our care for, I think, a total of 3 months, and we were just caring for them until they could find their permanent placement. So they literally came to us with literally the clothes on their back. One of them didn't even come with a pair of shoes, and like it just breaks your heart. So like we ended up going to Kmart, like buying them clothes, their school supplies, and like anything they needed. And they were going to be starting school, I think, in a week or 2 before we got them. So we're like, oh wow, like they're starting school in 2 weeks, like they've got no clothes, they've got nothing, like what are we going to do? So like after that all settled, like it's all good and well, they're kind of getting settled, and then it's time for them to go to school. And it's a bit of a heart jerker, but it made me so happy to see what we were doing was making a difference. So we're getting them all ready for school and making sure that they've showered and eaten breakfast, and we're packing their school bags with like their workbooks, and we're packing their lunchbox. And then after we've packed the lunchbox, we've given it to one of the girls who is 5 years old, and she's like, what is this? And I'm like, this is like your lunchbox, like you take it to school. And then she unzipped it and she's like, whoa, there's so much stuff in here. This is all me to take to school. And I'm like, yeah, like you're going to like have all that so you can eat at recess and lunch. And she's like, wow, like I've never had this before. And then I just broke down, and I'm obviously not going to break down in front of her, but like for them to not even have something as basic as a lunchbox, that kind of like broke my heart into a million pieces. But then it also made me really happy to know that we're making, even though I thought it was such a tiny difference, I didn't realize how much of a difference that made in their life. So yeah, just over the duration of those 3 months, I think that just one instant just kind of put it into perspective for me of how lucky we are and how we take so many things for granted, and how such a small, insignificant thing we might see as such a minor thing, like, oh yeah, taking lunch to school, that's no big deal, but like it is a big deal. And yeah. That's kind of one of the first things that popped to my head when I saw that question. And I just remember being so sad on the day, but then now that I look back and reflect on that, I see it as like one of the happiest moments because we made such a big difference.
Equally heartbreaking and beautiful at the same time. Thank you so much for sharing that, Kiah. I shall repeat the question for Elly. So tell us about a time you worked with a young person and it made you smile.
I think I have a memory of a goldfish lately, to be honest, but I think I laughed every day when I was around the young people. There is nothing more positive than just having a joke around with them and coming in and like they start to tease you a little bit, not in an unprofessional way. Obviously there's those boundaries and things like that, but when you know they come in and they want to have like the teasing conversation, you know that's when they feel comfortable. So kind of thinking about that, knowing that they had that trust in us to be able to kind of feel like themselves and be vulnerable in front of us. Yeah, I don't know that. I've had so many, I can't pinpoint one, and I know that's not an answer for you, but I just can't wait to get back to hang out with the young people because I literally laugh all the time. I can't wait.
Yes, 100%. Elly, I know exactly what you mean working in the youth centres in City of Casey. The young people are so wonderful and they make you laugh with their cheekiness every single day. And, I know exactly what you mean. And if any of the young people who attend those centres are listening today, 100% they know who they are, that make you smile and make you sort of roll your eyes, but in completely in jest. Yes, they know who they are and they know exactly what we're talking about. So, yeah. No, it's wonderful. And that's what makes this job so rewarding.
Definitely agree, and so excited to get back to the physical space. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you both so much for joining us. What a brilliant way to end season 2 of the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you both for attending. We absolutely loved having you on this episode.
We did indeed. As mentioned at the start, this is our final episode for the year, and what a year it has been. We have had such amazing guests this year on the KCU Services podcast, featuring so many inspiring stories and supportive services within the community. We are super excited to see what next year has in store. Thank you to all of our wonderful guests over this year who have added an abundance of value to the podcast by providing valuable information and insights. A big thank you to our listeners and supporters and those who work hard behind the scenes to bring the podcast to life. You all make it possible. If you know of anyone running programs or initiatives supporting young people that you think would be great on the podcast, please reach out to one of the team via direct message on the KCU Services social media accounts. If you have not already, feel free to subscribe to the KCU Services podcast channel and follow our social media accounts to stay up to date. All information and links discussed today will be added in the description below. From the KCU Services podcast team, have a happy holidays, stay safe and be kind.